And when you talk to providers, many of them say that they like it. They don't get hassled. They don't get rejected for this or that claim that's put in. And you know, not all of them will say they like it, but a good many of them that I talk to that I purposely question say that they like it. That would be something that we could institute quickly. And if private providers are concerned about that employers would immediately stop providing health insurance and just tell their employees to go there are ways that you can phase it in. I learned this from elections. We wanted to make changes quickly in Ohio. You know, I made some changes up here kind of quickly. But we wanted to go to paper ballots all over the state with 50-some of our counties already, I believe more than 60 of our counties, being on electronic touchscreen voting machines. It takes someone pushing hard to get the whole mass to move over just a little bit. And I learned that I could do some changes now. I would have to put some in later. But what you have to do is you have to give people choices. And if we keep going the way we are right now, with the number of people who keep losing their jobs, because with every 1% increase in unemployment, 1 million more people go without health insurance. So what happens when those people meet something catastrophic? They're left with no choice but to go to a hospital who are already hurting from a myriad of issues. The public option would actually help the hospitals. It would help them keep those costs down, because when they have to treat someone who can't pay for it, that cost has to go somewhere. It goes to those of us who pay health insurance premiums. It goes to the overall cost of the health care as it's provided, and before we know it, it's going to break down. So this idea of a co-op to do this, that's fine for rural electric cooperatives, but we've not modeled it except in a few situations with perhaps a nonprofit corporation that's self-funding. And by the time you get a government agency that's going to get up to speed with regulations, it'll be 2 years before that's really up and running. At that point, that's when Congress may be at a point where they're willing to say, let's consider it again. And then the naysayers will say, oh, but we haven't let this co-op work. Then we'll go 4 years, and how bad will it be in 4 years? People are suffering. We need to do something now. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Yeah.
Hi there.
How you doing? You have, with your urban agenda and on your Green Job Initiative here and your experience as the Secretary of State, if you're elected U.S. Senator, how would you work with the Small Business Administration as far as kind of bridging the gap as far as bringing information to people who are in urban areas, as far as the growth of small and medium-sized businesses? And with your experience as Secretary of State, how we can help people who have like different opportunities or different ideas as far as business is concerned, but they may not have the resources or access to the information. How would you provide like some type of partnerships with the Small Business Association or as a U.S. Senator, work with your state governments or what have you, or city governments?
I would work to set up the best constituent outreach operation possible. The beauty of, if you end up having 2 Democratic senators, the beauty of that is that imagine Sherrod Brown and me working together and in coordination with the things he's already doing with his economic development advisor who travels the state. But if we look at a particular problem, let's say it's overall we want to make this small business more accessible to people throughout the state, that we'd be able to actually work on that together, combine our staffs. Because as I do it now, and I've spent some time visiting with Senator Brown and listening to him in Washington, when you have 2 senators who aren't the same party, they don't necessarily always work together or walk lockstep, whether it's in the voting in Washington or doing the constituent work that they do here. So we would work to actually have our folks in our different offices throughout the state. You know, Sherrod has an office in Lorain. I might not have one in Lorain since he does. I might put one in Dayton. But we would work to make sure that we were getting that information out, and we would also collaborate with offices like the Secretary of State and the Department of Development to make sure that information is getting out to people. When you would call my office in D.C., I would have very responsive people. And when I came into the Secretary of State's office, I said to my people, I want letters to be answered, I want phone calls to be answered, emails to be answered. When I came into that office, my people in business services, a lot of them didn't have phones on their desks and they were not allowed to email any customers. And so when documents came into the office, if there was something wrong with them, they simply were mailed back with a form with a checkbox on what was wrong with them. And I didn't think that was good service. So I went further and I moved our client service center from a separate building to the same building that we're in. It's walk-in off the street. We've got a bike rack for the messengers who ride their bikes over there from the different firms and the companies. And then we opened an office in Cleveland. Chris Nance is the director of our Cleveland office. He's sitting, I think, right behind you here. And in our office in Cleveland, I think my staff thought it was a little crazy, but I said I want to do business filings up here. It had never been done before, and we're doing them now, and we found a way to make it work. I think the internet's helped, the whole computerization and technology has helped, but we know that we just need to make it more accessible to you. And then if you have questions on how to access or you're having problems with an agency, one of the major functions of someone in the legislature is to provide those constituent services. Thank you.
Treasurer Brunner, you mentioned your position on a number of issues that may come before the Senate if you're elected. There's one question I'd like to ask you about. Several months before he died, Walter Cronkite engaged in a campaign or started a campaign to change our draconian laws regarding the use and possession and sale of various drugs. He pointed out that many people in prison today are there because they simply have used marijuana and other drugs. My question is, if you are elected to the United States Senate, what position would you take on trying to change those laws so instead of really having punishment as a means of getting people to stop using drugs, we'd have other sources, perhaps health care?
Well, you're talking to a former drug court judge, so that question's right up my alley. Because when I became a common pleas court judge in Columbus, I tend to sit back and look a little philosophically at things and think, why is this happening? And when I would see people coming in and out of the system like a revolving door, and when you're the judge, you're talking directly to the defendant. That person is standing in front of you in a jail uniform, oftentimes in handcuffs, and you're looking at their family members behind them, and you're seeing a lot of human suffering. And when I first took the bench, one of the judges that had been there for a long time said about 80% of the criminal cases that came through there, and this is a felony court, involved drugs or alcohol or a combination of them. And I also found mental illness as well. Either the person was strung out when they did the crime, or they did the crime to feed the habit. And so that's when I started educating myself and convinced the 16 judges in my court, which wasn't easy, to start a drug court, and we provided mental health treatment with it. I have thought since I've been holding public office, where would the help best come from to keep fueling programs like that? Because Ohio is a leader in these specialized dockets, especially in mental health and also in drug courts. And I did notice that when Ted Strickland was in Congress, he and Mike DeWine worked very well together for programs to provide mental health treatment and oftentimes mental health and substance abuse are linked. It's hard to separate them. They provided a mechanism to provide funding. Unfortunately, Congress never funded it. I would work very, very hard to make sure that our criminal justice system is used for those, in terms of prisons, are used for those who are the most dangerous, who are either going to hurt themselves or hurt other people, but that others can be safely dealt with in the community in programs that provide drug treatment but also wraparound treatment that deals with all aspects of a person's life. Drug courts work, and it's not the only way to deal with it. There are lots of outpatient programs, but right now in Ohio we're in a world of hurt. With the state budget, there have been many, many cuts to services that are needed for people who are trying to make it in the community and desperately need those services. So sometimes I can tell you, having been a drug court judge, that sometimes when someone is using or abusing, the only way you can get through to them is to lock them up and make them wake up and see where it is that their life has led. But to put them in there long term with no hope of rehabilitation does nothing but repeat the cycle. You would find me to be a very strong advocate for programs for community corrections.